Finally, I got my hands on this computer! Back in the day, 12 years ago, this thing was insanely powerful! Under the hood, it has 2 massive graphics cards and originally cost $9,500. This is a 2013 Mac Pro with a top-tier configuration. A 12-core CPU and 2 Radeon FirePro D700s. Today, we're gonna take it apart, figure out why people hated it, and compare these proprietary GPUs to a PC equivalent, specifically the Radeon HD 7970 and Crossfire. There are, of course, some quirks regarding how this technology works in games, but we'll get to that later. And I'll also teach you how to delid a CPU using a razor blade and pliers. For now, just look at how little space the Mac Pro takes up compared to a mid-tower case. You can even place it on top and use it as a second PC. Here's a comparison with the world's largest mini PC, and even that takes up more space than the Mac. And if you put a regular mini PC without a dock next to the Mac Pro, it still takes up slightly more horizontal space. I didn't buy just 1 or 2 Xeons, I got a whole pack of them. We'll try installing them in the Mac and see if it accepts CPU that aren't officially supported. So let's take it apart. Along the way, I'll point out what's wrong with it. To remove the casing, you need to slide the ring to the side. It comes off easy, it's quite heavy. I don't like this flask because it demonizes me. Here's how it looks inside. A fairly simple yet practical locking system. This Mac has 64 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM in a quad-channel configuration. The modules aren't original, but according to Mikhailo, when he bought it, it only had 16 gigabytes. The mounting system reminded me of a laptop. I'm surprised they didn't come up with their own proprietary RAM modules out of greed, like they did with the SSD and its connector, which are proprietary. Here's what it looks like. This is probably one of Apple's dumbest design choices, and I believe it played a significant role in poor sales. But couldn't they have added a standard connector here, put another one on the adjacent board, and used PCIe 3.0 NVMe? After all, there were tons of complaints about the small storage capacity. To go further, we need to remove the top fan of this kettle, which is secured with 5 screws. Then, we unscrewed this clamp, as if they expected this ribbon cable to sun away. They could have saved on this and added another SSD instead. There's only 1 fan, but it's quite large and spins slowly. And I think that's a great decision because it's really quiet while dissipating a massive 400 watts of heat. Assisting it is a giant triangular heatsink with circuit boards attached to its 3 sides. Right now, I'm unscrewing what, in a regular graphics card, would be called the 2x8-pin auxiliary power connector. Here, power is supplied through 2 terminals for each board. Another smart solution, saving space and eliminating thick, ugly cables. The chip is held down by a tricky clamp that should be loosened gradually. A few turns per screw to avoid chipping the chip. But has anyone ever actually chipped a GPU like that? Now, this proprietary connector, this is a questionable choice. No other GPU besides these will fit here. They could have, for example, used MXM as the interface. MXM is found in high-end gaming laptops to connect powerful graphics cards. That way, this Mac could have been upgraded with dual RTX 3080s. But Apple is too greedy for such decisions. Next, we remove the bottom hatch, or a plate, depending on the angle look at it. Here we find a tricky proprietary board held by 2 screws, and I always forget to screw them back in. But that's a spoilery spoiler. Apple sure loves their proprietary connectors. They probably patented it just to prevent anyone from stealing such a brilliant design choice. I'm really curious how the X79 chipset, which has a TDP of 7.8 watts, doesn't overheat without a heatsink. Is the cooling system really that effective? I almost forgot to unscrew the 2 screws that transfer power from the PSU to the motherboard. Now, the last thing left is to remove the final board from this triangular setup. And let me tell you, removing it is a pain. This is probably the most annoying computer to take apart that I've ever dealt with. We've taken out the CPU, and unfortunately, we didn't even bend a single pin on the socket. This is LGA 2011, once a high-end platform. And here's our top-tier CPU for this socket, Intel Xeon E5-2697 V2, a 12-core beast. Just like the RAM, this isn't the original CPU, but it is officially supported by this Mac. Originally, it had a 6-core Xeon E5-1650 V2 CPU, but Mikhailo swapped it out himself, maybe with God's help. Meanwhile, I managed to do it with my feet. Not out of a good life, obviously. Here's what the Mac Pro looks like nearly fully disassembled. But what if we swap this CPU for one that isn't officially supported? Will it even boot? For example, the Xeon 2609 physically fits into the LGA 2011 socket, as you can see, but Apple's supported CPU list only includes 2nd-gen chips. So I'll try installing this one first, but before that, let me show you how to delid soldered CPUs using a super budget-friendly method. For this, we'll need a razor blade. Costs almost nothing. We use it to cut through the adhesive holding the CPU lid to the PCB. The main thing here is to not accidentally slit your wrists while doing it, and don't push the blade too deep. You could damage the capacitors on the lid. Once we've sliced along all sides, we grab some sturdy pliers, clamp onto the IHS, then wrap the CPU in cloth so that the sharp PCB edges don't cut into our hands. Now, we twist the lid counterclockwise. At first, it was a bit tough because of the solder, which, by the way, you could probably scrape off, roll into a ball, and use as a snack to go insane. I got a little too enthusiastic and snapped off a capacitor, but I think it'll still work. Next, I grabbed another CPU, this time a 1st gen Xeon. And since I was already warmed up, I popped this one open in half a turn. Check them out. This one even has a bigger die. But what if we try to delid a CPU without cutting the adhesive? Let's see. Oh, wow. Nope. I believed in myself too much and just ended up scratching the CPU lid. And some people actually spend insane money on delidding tools. Ha! Bunch of weaklings. Years of being broke have taught me how to truly save money. All right. Let's put our broken CPU in place and see if it actually works in this Mac Pro. Fixing the CPU in place is super annoying. The first time the processor even popped out of the socket pins, my blood pressure spiked for a moment, but unfortunately, I didn't even bend a single pin. No way we can't just let good stuff go to waste. Saving money should be economical. There's no way to secure the motherboard onto the heatsink without using my foot. I haven't cursed this much in a long time, but this build brought out the worst in me. Phew, the hardest part is finally done. Now all that's left is to put the cover on and install the GPUs. Assembling it is way easier than disassembling it. At least, that's what I thought. Until I noticed something. Look at this absolute rookie mistake when building a Mac. I swapped the graphics card around, so now the power connectors are on one side, but the screw holes are on the other. Well, hey, happens to the best of us, right? Aligning the power connectors with the holes was another fun little puzzle, but I managed to solve it. All right, looks like everything is in place. What the? I really hope this is the last failed moment in this supercomputer build. Finally, the PC is fully assembled. Are you kidding me? Long story short, our Xeon doesn't work, and I'm very mad. Now, let's try another one. It's not on the supported list, but it's a 2nd gen CPU, and it works! Well, kind of. Installing Windows on this Mac is pretty easy, but the downside is that modern drivers for these GPUs haven't been released in ages. It only has 4 cores and 4 threads. Performance is basically non-existent, but we'll compare it to our 12-core monster, which scores 4,200 points in Cinebench multi-core. That was insane back in the day, but now it's just laughable. Memory speed is actually pretty decent for its time, comparable to DDR4, even though this is just DDR3. Surprisingly, the CPU's performance in Cinebench is slightly worse than the exact same processor in other tests. Weird. Dual GPUs in games. To get both GPUs working together, you need to enable crossfire in the drivers. The screen flickers, and in theory, everything should work. Crysis 2007 froze for some reason, even though it officially supports crossfire. But GTA 5 worked beautifully and used both GPUs, as you can see from the load percentages. With 2 GPUs, GTA 5 on Ultra at 1080p runs amazingly. 70 to 80 FPS! Back in the day, that was insane, because most single GPUs couldn't handle this game. In 2013, only billionaires could afford 2 GPUs in Crossfire or SLI. But what happens when a game doesn't support Crossfire, yet still tries to use both GPUs? FPS left the chat. So did half of the textures. Honestly, I'd still play it like this. The Witcher 3 on medium settings just froze completely for no reason. Borderlands wouldn't even launch. God of War required CPU instructions that this processor doesn't support. Cyberpunk 2077 didn't launch at all. DirectX 12 issue, even though these GPUs almost fully support DX12. The only game that actually worked well on 2 GPUs, GTA 5. What if we use just 1 GPU? Just look at the design of this box. This is the Asus DirectCU2 version. They're basically telling us, if you have neither crap nor a spoon, you'll at least have to buy a spoon. PCI Express 3.0 is presented here as if it's some amazing advantage. Whoever bought this in 2012 made a real investment in the future. The card is so wide that it takes up 3 slots. The fans look brand new. This is the cleanest used GPU I've ever bought. You can tell it's been well taken care of, or at least clean for selling. Let me take it apart and show you what it looks like inside. This was a top-tier build from Asus at the time because similar cards from other vendors looked like basic office GPUs, even though they were high-end cards back then. That's why finding these in working condition is tough. Most of them either have GPU failures or other issues, but some are still alive. Look at this heatsink! 6 copper heat pipes! Even modern high-end cards don't have aluminum fins this thick anymore. I think you can hear it for yourself. So, do these two GPUs look alike? Of course they do! They're identical. This card has no RGB lighting, which is kinda weird. But even without it, considering the design and ignoring these ancient DVI ports, it doesn't even look like a 13-year-old GPU inside a modern PC. Though, the fan speeds made the entire PC vibrate. This GPU was supported by drivers until 2022. A full 10 years! Now that's what I call customer support! It even supports 144 Hz at 2K via DisplayPort, while the Mac Pro's HDMI is stuck at just 60 Hz, which feels like 30. Here are the specs and what this GPU supports. For some reason, GTA 5 on Mac Pro runs 20 FPS better, even though the 7970 has newer drivers. Maybe that's exactly the reason. The Witcher 3 runs the same on both GPUs, but if we overclock our FirePro, FPS jumps by a whole 5 FPS. In CS2, both cards show the same FPS, but on Mac Pro, the frame time graph is awful! And you will suffer too if you try playing on this system. Borderlands 3, what a fun game back in the day. And here the 7970 performs significantly better, plus 25% FPS on the same drivers. That's enough to actually play this game on ultra settings. FPS is low, but stable, so I could totally play like this. Here are the games that only launched on the 7970. RDR2 on low settings, running at a stable 30 to 35 FPS. Cyberpunk 2077 at unstable 30 to 30 FPS on low. And here's a comparison of Crossfire versus no Crossfire. As you can see, the difference is significant, but not exactly 2 times better. Fallout 3 runs way better on a single GPU. Man, just remembering my first playthrough at 900p, low settings, 25 FPS makes me shudder. Kinda like these faceless, headless NPCs on Mac Pro with dual GPUs. One thing I noticed, Mac Pro actually handles DaVinci Resolve pretty well. Timeline barely lags, as you can see. Overall, the Mac Pro GPU AMD Radeon HD 7970 stacks up like this compared to other well-known GPUs, and it's still stronger than some integrated gaming GPUs. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, see you next time!